Good afternoon, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. We're going to talk about habits today. What are habits? Most people look at the word habit. A lot of them see addiction. So we're going to talk about habits. And when I get here to get started, I want to talk about a habit that somebody had that he ended up dying from. A lot of us hear stories about these habits. People dying from their habits, their addictions, and people following in their parents' footsteps and following along those same addictions and dying from those same addictions. So what is an addiction? What is a habit? Well, I was in a 12-step program for, quote, specifically addictions. And I've always been a man of words. So when I look at the word addiction, I look at the things that are compared with it. What's synonymous? What does it connect with? And one of the first words that most dictionaries will put in there is a devotion or a habit. Devotion. What's a devotion? Well, a lot of people are devoted to many things. Religiously attending church, religiously going to breakfast at a certain time in the morning to a specific place. These are habits. These are devotions, things that we become addicted to. And the guy I'm particularly talking about, he spent his lifetime building up his addiction while the world watched. And when he passed on from his addiction, many people in the world were saddened. And yet today his son follows in his addiction, and he's applauded worldwide as well, just like his father, who died from his addiction. He died from his habit. And so we'll get into that here as soon as I expose who I'm talking about. Because a lot of people look at this addiction, this habit, that this man died from as a devotion, rather than the derogatory sense of an addiction. And that's what I'm talking about, is how do you take in the words that you're hearing? What intent do they have? And so when we think about addiction, we take a negative connotation to it. It's inferred, implied, presumed, assumed as a bad thing. Yet in the dictionaries we see it synonymously described as a devotion or a habit, something one does on a regular basis. So where does that negative connotation come from? And so when we think about this man that died from his devotion, addiction, habit, lifestyle, we're talking about Dale Earnhardt Sr. Dale Earnhardt Sr. developed a habit of driving fast around a track in circles. And he made it a lifelong lifestyle habit that he did regularly when scheduled. And so when we talk about this thing of habits, now we're going to get back to that original word, habit. What is habit? Well, it depends. Because a habit is something that's custom. Huh? What do you mean, custom? Well, It's custom that this tribe wears certain clothing types, and they can be discerned as different from this tribe because this tribe wears a different clothing type. And so what I'm talking about is if you go back to like the Federation of Tribes, you got 5 main tribes in the Americas, and they all dressed according to their regions. What was customary in that region might have been wolf pelts in the northern, might have been deer pelts in the southern. So you would see differences in their clothing. And that is the derivative of the word habit. It came from their habitat. It came from what was already customly given freely. It was already provided. And they made use of it on a regular basis. And it was used to discern the differences of where they came from. Prior to anybody verbally speaking a sound constructed phonically differently here than for those that were here, thus being a name or a calling. The deer tribe, the wolf tribe. And this is where everything about us comes from, is from our habits. What is custom to us, not to some commercial system. Some commercial system where first you must listen to in order to be enlisted. Are you going to list in to somebody who wants to enlist you? Or are you going to hear the sound that's custom? Are you going to see the things that are custom? Are you going to be in tune, in cycle, what's regular, with what is custom, what is natural? Or are you going to enlist to listen to someone else portray their habits and enforce their habits on you, on yourself? So I want you people to think about this. Neat. Are you trying to teach or are you sharing? Somebody messaged me this morning and asked me to teach them. I can't teach you. I can't teach anybody. All I can do is gather information, share it, share my experiences with that information, and do my best to guide you into comprehending how you can apply it to yourself. You have to learn it. I can't just take the information and give it to you and say, there, I've taught you. I don't teach anybody. I learn as much as I can. The things that I study, and I'm just going to call you sister. I don't like the names myself. And the way this is spelled, N-E-I-T, Hodges, I don't know if it's neat or night. I believe it to be night because that's the way it's supposed to be phonetically pronounced according to the English grammar. However, I don't know what grammar style you're using, so therefore it leaves a conveyance assumption or presumption assumption situation where I don't want to be at fault. I'm told I'm blameless as long as I follow his way, so I'm just going to call you sister. And sister, all I can do is tell you that the things that I study the most are etiology, which is the root cause. etymology, which is the root word, and epistemology, which is the root knowledge, of which all three put together is where we get our root wisdom. And you can only get wisdom within yourself. You can't get that from somebody else. They can't teach you wisdom. Wisdom comes from experience of using the information that you have, using the information that you gather through your senses, and discerning it for yourself. See, when I turned 18, I didn't just become what they call age of majority. Age of majority. What is majority? Figure it out. There's a lot of different things for majority. Are you a majority in this group? Are you a majority in that group? Or are you a majority in your own household? So when I think about age of majority, I think about age of discretion. I'm now old enough to discern for myself. And so when the society says that you have to be of a certain age, an age of majority, do I have to listen to them? Do my parents have to listen to them? Fuck no. If my mom and dad, or if my parents, my mom and dad, I'm going to stick with mom and dad. If my mom and dad discern for themselves that they've educated myself and passed on what they have for knowledge, they've helped inform me, they've formed myself in them, in their beliefs. When they believe that they've informed me enough that I can then discern for myself how to behave in the world, whether that be at the age of 14, 16, 18, 20, 21, 24, I don't give a rat's ass, because I don't give a rat's ass about society posing their habits on me. That's up to me to decide. I decide whether I have informed my offsprings, my heirs and heiresses, my kings and queens. I decide if they are capable mentally of using that as a tool for prosperity and abundance. I'm the one that determines that, not some government agency saying that I have to follow their habits. I have to go to work 40 hours a week in order to make a paycheck that's going to cover all the expenses. We have to think about all these words that we're using, particularly the word pay. When you get a job, a J-O-B, a Job. Think about Job, the book of Job, and how he worked all of his life, and he gathered up all these earthly treasures, all these cattle, all these cows, all these pigs, all these children, all these buildings, all these different businesses, and they were all destroyed. Did he let that tear him apart? No, because that's the habit of man. The habit of a spiritual creation is to always love that which created you. So when it comes to Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Dale Earnhardt Jr., it didn't matter whether his dad died from his addiction. He still loved him. He still loved the way he lived. And just like any heirs that Job might have had, would have continued to keep raising cattle and pigs and creating businesses for the love of life, for the love of love, for the life of love. He made what was right his habit. And as long as it's not wrong, it's not right, or it's right. So let's think about who it's wrong to. Well, who describes it as a habit? Who describes it as an addiction? Who describes it as a devotion? Who describes it as customary? Who is describing what in your life? Are you? Or is it somebody else that says they have authority? And where is that authority coming from? Is it coming from Genesis 17, verse 1? I am Almighty God. So long as ye follow my way, ye shall be blameless. I created you in my image, and I give you dominion over the land, air, and water. L-A-W. You are law. Ye are creators. Go forth and be prosperous and provide abundance for your next future generations so they can take in what you made habit. and learn from it. Correct. You're my sister, I'm just going to call you sister. I still haven't, I'm going to pronounce it Knight. Knight Hodges. You're saying the English language is not just left to right, but created for purposes beyond what you may get from the best of public educational. The public education has indoctrinated us to believe in terms and conditions of contracts. In other words, they've taught us just enough English to be able to speak it without actually knowing what we're saying. And that's why we end up saying awkward things instead of short, concise sentences. We drag them out. We make multiple sentences into one. We don't clarify our paragraphs. We end up with dangling participle verbs. I didn't get a ticket for speeding. I got a speeding ticket. That's two different ways of saying them. And when you say it correctly, you don't end up with the dangling participle verb speeding at the end of the sentence. You don't get a ticket for speeding. You get speeding tickets. They're not accusing you of having to accept a ticket because you sped. They're accusing you of speeding and you have to accept the ticket. So when it comes to English, the concise English grammar is constructed in a way that if you read it forwards, it should say the same thing as it does when you read it backwards. So when you have a third grader who's trying to comprehend how to write a sentence and you give him certain words that are all scrambled up and he has to put them in an order, it shouldn't come out, my penis is in a goat. It should say that my goat is in a pen. See if I can write that down for you here. Let me comment here. That way you guys will get a good visual of this. Sorry, it's taking me so long. I got a screwed up phone here still. There you go. See, it shouldn't be my penis in a goat. It should be my goat is in a pen. And that's the babble of the English language. We've got so many words that have terms and conditions put on them that we think they're words still. Defendant is not a word. It is a term that has a root word that's had conditions of prefixes and suffixes attached to it. And once you contract that down, once you contract the conditions off of that term, you get to the root word. So when we think about representative, present isn't even the root word. It's not representative, it's presentative. Sent. I was originally sent through a creation of life. I was pre-sent before any fiction put my calling down on paper. Or any other being put my calling down on paper as a fiction. And this is the kind of stuff we have to think about, people. When we think about every one of these words, terms, and conditions, we have to know what we're talking about. So when we think about addictions, we have to think about the synonyms. What are they synonymous with? In what context? What intent is being conveyed? So when somebody talks about Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Dale Earnhardt Jr., they generally don't talk about them as having addictions. They talk to them about much more in the sense of they were devoted to a career. car rear. Funny how that turns out, huh? So think about this stuff, people. And remember, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you. I'm making it a habit. It's custom. And so I'm going to keep on doing it. Though it's probably not on a regular scheduled basis, I'm going to keep doing it. So anyway, God bless. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Love ya.